Okay. I want to do the best that I can to prepare you guys for, this belief structure that what Chris experienced is just a little bit of a microcosm of what's unfolding planetarily. And it's not a random event. This is all part of the design as the battle rages between the light and the dark.
Starting Monday, New York, you can't go to the gym, you can't go to restaurants, you can't go to indoor events.
Yeah. So that level of discrimination in a city like New York, right? So like, who's not vaccinated in New York? It's disproportionately the minorities, so the Blacks and Hispanics, and a lot of immigrants. And now you're forbidding them from walking into restaurants. Here, and you look at the data around it, and it's also sketchy around how you catch this thing and whatever. Here in Italy, as of last week, and in France, you're not allowed to get on the trains if you're not vaccinated. And in Italy, we have a lot of ferries because they go back from the islands and they skip around because a lot of coastal cities. These are open air ferries. It's like 100, like literally my computer says it's 102 degrees out right now. Right? And we know that this virus doesn't spread outdoors, that the sunlight actually strengthens your immune system. The data is pretty conclusive around it. It spreads in your living room, right? It doesn't spread outside. It certainly doesn't spread in 100-degree heat with the sun beaming down on you. And yet you're not allowed to get on a ferry for 20 minutes to go from Sicily to the mainland unless you're vaccinated. But why? Nobody's catching COVID on the ferry. There's never been a documented case of catching COVID on the ferry. In Germany, they arrested 600 people who went on to protest their vaccine pass. And they arrested them because they said, you're not allowed to gather in public because you're going to catch COVID. And
is this the elite 5D negative that's doing this? I mean, I thought it was only existed in New York. I didn't know that they had that power.
Yes, it is the elite 5D negative is a good way of putting it. These are the low vibrational, high density, low vibrational beings. So there's a whole another conversation, but when you start to see things that don't make sense and they're deliberately suppressing public movement, discriminatory and designed to create a tiered society, it's the same vibration that existed in Nazi Germany in the late 30s that started to strip certain populations of civil liberties and then eventually citizenship. And they kept chipping away, and they created that same tiered structure because it's easier to control a population when they're divided. The population starts to attack itself. I'm glad I'm not them. And the other population says, what's wrong with you? Why is it okay for me to be discriminated against? And then you get this, when all the while it is being controlled by a much higher, more insidious energy.
I try to tell the people in my recovery group that separation is the disease, and what's going on. And I think I told Chris, this is very much a 1984 us versus them. Eurasia is bad one day, Amerasia is bad, Eurasia, back and forth. And using other people as scapegoat. And it is, like you said, it's very much what had happened to the Jews, the Holocaust.
It's the same idea. It's very much, and it wasn't just the Jews. The Nazis decided to discriminate. The Gypsy, anyone of spiritual intention got caught up in it. And then anybody who was seen as weak or inferior. So the cripples, right? The blacks got thrown into, there weren't a lot of blacks in that society. But the camps killed 6 million Jews, but they also killed 4 million others that were seen as in one way or another against the Nazi agenda. And a lot of those camps were operating next to towns, and the towns would complain because the smell was so horrible. And yet all the while, at least it's not me kind of consciousness was running through. And most of those people didn't feel they could do anything anyways, but they took time out of their day to go and complain when the winds shifted direction and they were bothered by the smell.
But that's because of the human or 3D tendency to think of self and only self, right? I
It's-
believe that Chris and Anna, you, Erica, because you guys part of a higher vibrational consciousness, you're able to think of others, of a group oriented.
Anybody, it doesn't matter your level of consciousness. Everybody, the human capacity for compassion is limitless. It is part of the choice. This is a realm of choice. Everybody in this realm is constantly presented with an opportunity to make a choice. Do I prioritize me, or do I prioritize the needs of others? And usually it's, how do I create the right balance between prioritizing my needs and prioritizing those that are around me? So people ask, when does this all end? So when humanity is unified, because the fourth density is the realm by which we start to form a social memory complex, which is the individual stays true to themselves, but they end up prioritizing the needs of others.
But wouldn't energetically, those who are of low density, because they took the vax, as you said, the body would reject it or get sick, wouldn't, lack of better words, Mother Nature purge itself for those who do not energetic match to her vibration? There's going to be a lot of people that are going to exit Earth.
There's already been a lot that have left.
There will be a lot more, though.
This is the belief.
Right. So those who are of
and it will happen. It will happen suddenly. Everything is fine, and then it's like, holy crap, what's happening?
But is it the vaccine that's also causing the sudden drop?
So remember, so I have to disclaim these conversations. It's just my belief, guys. It's just my belief. It's not my belief, and it's just to be supportive. It is not to create some type of doomsday environment. And so the belief is, and this is what I've been witnessing already, the belief is that a frequency can be emanated that can activate the bioweapon that's injected into the body. And so it's already happening where a number of people will fall ill or perish, but it will happen in a covert way so that it doesn't create any panic, and so that people continue to get vaccinated along the way. But it is designed as a depopulation mechanism, as well as one that fosters great fear, to help the negative vibration to move into a state of greater control over the broader population. And so the planet is trying to pull forward. There are many incarnates that are bringing a vibration that is supportive of that ascension. There are energies that are here that do not desire an enlightened state for the planet. And so they have promoted a bioweapon to control and to maim or kill, and to also lower the vibration of the incarnates here to retard the process of the ascension. And ironically, they're doing it for their survival, because those beings of very low vibration cannot survive in a realm that ascends. It can only survive in a third density realm, which has greater neutrality. When it moves to a fourth density realm, they'd be too weakened to persist.
Can I ask you a question about that? And this is just a weird question. Are those people that we call people humans, or like, do they really know that that's what they're doing? I'm so confused. Because as human, why would you want to do that to people? Like, I don't understand that. Does that make sense? Or is it just me?
Remember Victor, the 1980s?
It's a good question.
Anna, you don't give yourself enough credit. It's the right question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the right question. And I, for the longest time, was like, it can't be, and it can't be, and it can't be. And I'm like, okay, I'm a very sane, level-headed man. I have a background in finance and economics. I spent my life in a practical space poring over numbers and analytics. Can't be. Can't be. And so I was trying to think of a way, if this question came up on the call, how I would articulate it. Have you ever done one of those genetic tests where you like spit into a little vial and they like tell you all, like, oh, you're predisposed to this illness, and you've got, like 3% Neanderthal or whatever it is, and you're Ashkenazi Jew. Like, you get all that information back. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
when I saw that line item, it said, oh, you're 2.8% Neanderthal. And I'm like, 2.8% Neanderthal, like my DNA. And I was like, okay, well, what are the Neanderthals? Okay, so they're a bipedal hominoid species that went extinct on the planet about 50,000 years ago. And they were breeding with humans for long enough that some of their DNA persisted. And those of us of like Northern European descent still have a chunk of that DNA in our body. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, if there was another hominoid being that was upright on 2 feet, it was hanging out with humans, was there only one other hominoid being, or were there others? And there were others. This planet is a 4 billion year old planet. The humans that we know are only a few 100,000 years old. And so there were others, and apparently they've been here since the beginning. Where the conversation gets a little bit harder to understand, this is the part that I was like, okay, that makes sense, like that I can believe. Where it gets a little bit harder to understand is that different conflicts at different times, and as the planet and the atmosphere changed, apparently we have beings that live on planet, and we have beings that live in planet.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that you can burrow down, like if you ever dug into the soil and you're seeing all these insects, you're like, wow, there's so much, there's like a whole ecosystem. Or if you go, you watch some of those nature channels where they go like a mile down in the ocean and there's no light and it's all heavy pressure. And you're like, so much going on down there.
Okay, I get it.
We're under this belief that all life exists on the surface, and it doesn't. And so apparently for a very long time, a very, very long time, there have been beings, some of them are vibrating positively, most of them are vibrating negatively, but there are beings that have been residing in the planet, and they have been influencing the workings on the planet and doing it very covertly. But when the Nazis were running the camps, they were diverting a lot of resources. A lot of their bright scientists were doing genetic testing on children. In the 40s, they were doing tremendous medical experiments on kids. Why? Weren't they trying to win the war? Why was genetic testing a priority in the 40s, before they even knew of the sequencing of DNA? They had no idea, but why were they doing so much genetic testing? Okay, so that same vibration, that same consciousness has been working for a long time to splice in their DNA into the human DNA. And they need, and a number of people like Mark Zuckerberg, like you listen to him, like, that guy's not human. Because he has a chunk of this DNA in him. And so his consciousness is operating in a service to self vibration, which is the energy of those beings.
Yeah, that makes more sense, yeah.
And so because they've been working on this for so long, we all have a port. We can actually, you can just remember that video where I asked you guys call to the Arcturians to help clear any, you can call to the Arcturians to clear any of this foreign DNA from your body, right? Because we have a portion of it. The idea, this is the premise, is that if they can move your DNA enough into their DNA, then they'll be able to create a controlled environment, and humans will behave more like them. That's kind of the fundamental belief around it. And so a lot of the weaponry that's floating around the planet has that very intention in mind. Reduce the population, start to shift the DNA of those that remain, put them into a more controlled space, and continue with a lot of different tools. Some of them simple, like visual tools, like when you're watching TV and the internet, some of them more profoundly DNA-based mechanisms to bring them more into an adapted state that these beings can take advantage of. And a lot of the politicians and the business and big tech, big media, big politicians and big pharma, the leaders of virtually all these organizations have enough of this DNA in their system that they're already thinking in alignment with these beings.
Alan,
Yeah.
hasn't the choice already been made though? Aren't we going to ascend 4D positive regardless of the
What
outcome of
happens?
this?
So apparently these beings don't believe that. And
But what's the truth though? It's the truth that we're going to, or we have already?
yeah, so we're
Claim it at least.
yeah, so I'm not the authority on it, right? Like I can give you what I know, and then you'll take it with a grain of salt. You guys can obviously challenge the belief. So the belief emanating from the positive camp is that there's enough vibration pouring in now. Many of the incarnates that are arriving are wanderers that are of the light, that are bringing in positive vibration. So it's a function of time. How long does it take for the vibration to shift because of all this beautiful energy that's arriving? I understand that at the same time, the channel that's bringing in incarnates into the service to self camp has been closed. And so these beings that I'm speaking of have no mechanism to continue to reincarnate, which is why it's an act of desperation now that they have to take over the human space to persist. I was also told that many of the higher ups within these beings have seen that inevitability and have since left. And a lot of the UFO sightings that have been going on for the last however many years have been a small percentage of the most higher ups departing. And so the belief, and so then there's those that remain that didn't have a choice. And they figure that if they're going to perish anyways, they might as well go out with what they feel is their best likelihood of not going out, which is killing as many humans as necessary and then taking over the human race. And many of them were lower down the list anyways. They didn't have a choice. They were workers. They were just left behind. And so if you ask those of the light, yes, Chris, that's the inevitability. The planet will ascend, and the Federation that's bringing in the resources have kind of made that inevitability. But the others that are left behind of low vibration, they're fighting for their survival in their own way. And they have a playbook that they can draw from because this same mechanism has been used on other planets successfully to enslave other planets. And so what we're experiencing, where we get restrictions and then we get a reprieve, where we get illness and then we get a reprieve, where we kind of go into, it's been used before successfully.